Yo, this video is sponsored by NordVPN. If there's one thing that's absolutely paramount in the age of information, it's the ability to protect what happens to yours in it. VPN stands for Virtual Private Network, and what it does is keeps your data safe behind a wall of next generation encryption so that third parties, including your own internet provider, can't spy on whatever you do. Whether you're placing bids on rare GameCube titles or in the middle of a Wikipedia deep dive at 3 a.m. Did you know the moon can have moonquakes? Huh. NordVPN has got you covered, and with up to 6 devices being able to connect to a single account, I can read more about the first college football game in US history on pretty much anything I want without a care in the world. Go Rutgers! Plus, if the sense of security isn't enough, having access to NordVPN servers across 59 countries means I can bypass region-specific limitations on the experiences I care about. Can't watch an anime opening because it's blocked in your country? No problem. Just a simple click, and as far as YouTube is concerned, I'm tapping in from the misty mountains of Japan. Live in a country where services like Discord are banned? Good news! You just moved from Dubai to New Zealand and you didn't even have to pack your bags. And with a 30-day money-back guarantee, there's no downsides to giving it a spin around the old digital block. Right now, you can get a huge discount on a 2-year plan, plus 1 additional month for free when you go to nordvpn.com/breadsword. Take control of your internet experience today and make sure your data stays cozy and safe. That's nordvpn.com/breadsword.
The longer it takes, the better you come to know.
Hey! It's Halloween!
But you keep trying to hide the trace. Oh, I can't keep holding back my love. Oh, I can't keep holding back my love. Oh, I can't keep holding back my love. There's so much you wanna say, it every single way. Step by step by
The MoMA, the Reina Sofia, the Louvre. What do they all have in common? Art. That's what we're gonna talk about today. The most underappreciated, underrated, dare I say, slept on form of art in the hallowed halls of humanity's long history. I'm talking, of course, about weird licensed video games. The 80s through the 2000s, a period of time which saw not only the birth and proliferation of an entirely new medium of art, but also the most unhinged works that medium would ever birth. I'm talking Blade 2, the video game. The Fifth Element, directed by Luc Besson, the video game. I'm talking The Sopranos, the fucking video game. I'm talking Shrek 2, the greatest sequel to ever be written, the video game. And it all started in 1976. In Chicago. Martin Scorsese was still deep in his Coke phase. Richard Donner had just dropped The Omen, and Sega had recently taken notice of one of their arcade cabinets doing crazy numbers throughout Japan. A little ditty by the name of Road Race, one of the highest grossing video games of the entire year. Quickly realizing that they had struck digital gold, Sega updated and then flipped the game into various reskins, starting with a number of motorcycle variants such as Man TT and Motocross. But it wasn't long until Sega co-founder and possible time traveler David M. Rosen foresaw a future wherein the medium of video games would become a vessel for the intellectual properties of television, literature, and film, and he had just the character to open the door with. Arthur Herbert Fonzarelli, aka the Fonz, one of the most well-beloved characters in sitcom history, at the crest of his popularity. In November of that year, Sega would debut Fonz the video game at the Music Operators Association show in Chicago, forever opening the floodgates between video games and the greater world of fictional canons. And a flood it would be. 1979, Star Trek Phaser Strike accompanies the launch of the first handheld console, the Microvision, to promote Star Trek the Motion Picture. 1982, Alien the video game hits the Atari 2600. Later the same year, E.T. the Extraterrestrial nearly kills the industry altogether, but it won't matter. There's no stopping it now. Tron, The Dark Crystal, Krull, Star Wars, Cloak and Dagger, Ghostbusters, Gremlins, Back to the Future, The Goonies, Rambo, Top Gun, Labyrinth, Cobra, King Kong, Jaws, Warlock, Indiana Jones, and The Karate Kid, among others, took the video game industry by storm. And their production became as inexorably linked to the proliferation of intellectual property as action figures or costumes. And it quickly became a given that for any high-budget feature looking to build hype or longevity, a video game would surely follow. And they were almost all really bad, but that didn't make them not good. This is, I think, where licensed video games shine the brightest, and also where they offer the most stark contrast to the qualities I think their modern equivalents often lack, that leave them conventionally better games, but largely more forgettable ones. as a result. GoldenEye 007 is, I think, the perfect example of how this precarious balance really manifests itself in a work. It's a first-person shooter on one of the most obtusely designed controllers in history. Its visuals are sodden and indistinct, sometimes downright confusing in its lack of contrast. Its movement is simultaneously oversensitive and devastatingly sluggish. Weapon balance is non-existent, its levels are unimaginative, and its campaign is one of the least compelling stories I've ever played through. In spite of this, GoldenEye is one of the sickest games ever created. It's the first FPS I ever played on my friend's older brother's N64 when I was like 7, and I could tell even then that it was electric. The multiplayer is easily the highlight of the game and principally what gives its players such fond memories of it. The rush of chemicals it sends to your brain when you land your first throwing knife, or when you and a friend kill each other with a remote mines while the 4 of you play at a cumulative 2 frames per second, is irreplaceable. Quake 2, Team Fortress, and Unreal all released around the same time period and are demonstrably better games on a mechanical level, but the reason they haven't retained the same warm afterglow as GoldenEye is because the very flaws that plagued this game are what made it so unique and so memorable. Battle for Bikini Bottom, Shrek 2, The Hobbit, so many of my favorite memories with video games come from these weird, unpolished, but nonetheless charming interpretations of the worlds I loved as a kid. I don't think anyone on the Western Seaboard has played more Star Wars Battlefront 2 on the PS2 than I have. I would put money on that. I literally stopped being friends with one of my childhood best friends because he didn't want to play it with me anymore. My relationships live and die by whether or not I can game with a person, and that is maybe reflective of some deeper personal problems, but I'm too busy playing the Nightmare Before Christmas Devil May Cry clone to meaningfully reflect on myself or my actions, okay? Get off my back! I'm shriekified right now. Yeah, I know I said we played Budokai Tenkaichi 3 when you came over, but my cousin stole it, so we're playing Fight Club the video game after this instead! Recently, I decided to take some time out of my busy schedule of laying in bed and watching Star Trek until 6 p.m.
Now tell me, Commander, what is data? I don't understand.
What is he? A machine. Is he? Are you sure? Yes. You see, he's met 2 of your 3 criteria of ascension, so what if he meets the 3rd? Consciousness in even the smallest degree. What is he then? I don't know. Do you?
Do you? Do you?
To revisit some of those bizarre licensed games that I loved as a kid, and I honestly had more fun with them now than I did then. The Nightmare Before Christmas Oogie's Revenge is insane. There's no jump button for some reason, just this kind of Bayonetta flip input that you have to triple press to get a jump out of, and there are no real combos in the game in spite of the fact that it's a Devil May Cry clone developed by Capcom, but it doesn't really matter because the game is hilarious. The weapon Jack uses throughout the story is called Soul Robber, and every time you use his grab attack, he yells it out like an anime protagonist. So even though the game literally broke twice and made me have to restart my playthrough, I didn't really care because my friends and I were just yelling Soul Robber over and over while I parkoured around giant lava skeletons.
Soul Robber! Everybody scream! Soul Robber!
Shrek 2 is this like funhouse mirror image of an action RPG. Its lack of ability to portray physical depth and the dramatic over-tuning of random enemy AI, accompanied by the under-tuning of your own party's AI, renders the game's intended approach to a bunch of its levels like the prison break completely useless. There's no shot that you can actually stealth through this whole thing. I refuse to believe that is possible. The guards literally stopped pathing halfway through the level for me. That said, its cozy visuals and the distinct playstyles of each character and the goofy jokes it ham-fists into every line elevates these flaws until they become part of what makes it endearing. Its final boss fight is like actually hard, like not in a within the context of the game kind of way, but in a like the phases aren't clearly telegraphed and dying means restarting the entire ad encounter that itself takes 10 minutes each time before the real fight starts due to its mechanics kind of way. And as I was throwing myself at this wall trying to beat it for what felt like an hour, I stopped feeling annoyed by it as a flaw and started enjoying it as a joke that makes perfect sense. Of course, the fairy godmother wouldn't make her fight fair. That's the entire point of her character and the movie, whether or not it was intentional. I'm also in love with the Lord of the Rings games for the PS2. These kind of hack and slash dungeon crawlers developed by Visceral Games that follows the micro and macro plots throughout the movies as you control the different characters depending on which location and scene you're playing through. It was actually in my copy of Return of the King, the game, not the movie, that I first saw an interview with actors. The first time that connection was made in my brain that regular human beings make the movies my 3rd grade self loved. The game itself actually slaps in a lot of ways. Its combat is weighty without ever feeling bogged down. The feedback from a well-timed parry or landing one of the many combos unlocked throughout the game feels substantial and rewarding, and its replayability is surprisingly high, and it's pretty impossible to go wrong with Howard Shore's score for the film. That said, its conveyance is almost non-existent. Kind of ironic given that they're in theory among the most on-the-rails licensed games you could make. Oftentimes, you're left to cheese through levels in a way that you can tell the game isn't designed to be played through, such as the escape from Osgiliath. In larger battles, the friendly AI often get themselves stuck in the floor's collision or in random corners, and then die to enemies they could otherwise handle. And they try to follow in the footsteps of games like the Mark of Kree by doing the seamless transition from gameplay to cutscene kind of thing, but doing so with actual scenes from an actual movie, contrasted against middling for its time PlayStation 2 graphics, is just so goofy looking. But I remember it with such clarity. Before I revisited them, I remembered these games, these weird digital billboards of promotional material for kids, better than I did a lot of games that I know had better construction, tighter movement, cleaner visuals, whatever. These aren't unassailable, brilliantly composed works, but neither are any of my favorite movies, or books, or albums, or cars, or people, for that matter. I've had hours-long arguments with friends over favorite Kanye albums and why mine aren't the classics, or if you could take only one anime with you to a desert island, what would it be, or whatever. And the unifying theme across them is that I have a great deal more affection for imperfect things than I do their opposites. I just think along the path towards a higher standard of video game, licensed or otherwise, a lot of the minutia and the eccentricities that I love about the medium have started to sort of disappear, and perfectly serviceable but wholly unremarkable to me works have begun to take their place. I've bought the last two Battlefront games because I love Star Wars. I used to drink from Jar Jar Binks' head as a kid, and the bike I learned how to ride on had his face on it. And I understand, on almost every level, they are mechanically stellar productions. DICE's Battlefront 2 cost an alleged $200-something million to create. Its sound design is only matched by the films it owes its name to, but I feel nothing when I play them. I have like 5 hours played across the both of them. They're just flat in a way. I don't know. I love Batman. I think Jeff Loeb's Hush is one of the greatest works of comic writing this century. I have a Mask the Phantasm poster behind my right shoulder. No, the other shoulder. But like, I remember one moment out of all the Arkham games, which I own 4 of, and it's because they're just fine. Inoffensively good. I don't mean to sound like old man yells at cloud either. I think the medium still produces great works, particularly indie games, and I love playing video games just as deeply as the day I discovered them. That'll never change. That's just a physical law of the universe. But I feel like the world of licensed video games especially has just become so much more subdued over the past decade. More even-toned, less dynamic. Shadow of War is fantastic. Technically, its Nemesis system is beyond genius. Truly, I'm baffled by what its devs were able to accomplish, and the art team absolutely killed it. But honestly, Lord of the Rings War in the North held my attention for 8 times as long, and it's a buggy mess with a broken final act, ham-fisted cameos, and as a game wholly unknown by anyone I've ever tried to talk to about it, because it was a licensed hack-and-slash RPG on a minuscule budget, released 10 days before Skyrim. That's a tough break. There are exceptions, of course. Spider-Man, I think Star Wars Dark Souls is sick, although what interests me about it the most, honestly, is that there is a palpable sense that it was released unfinished, but that's actually interesting. You know, that's character. There's some scratch in the paint. Polish silver and it'll shine for you, but polish it too much and you risk damaging the very thing you tried to make perfect. Fuck it, give me more Nickelodeon Melee clones with no voice acting and royalty-free versions of the music because they couldn't afford the real thing. Give me an Uncut Gems dungeon crawler made for the price of an imported S14 that plays like Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance.
Drawn by a haunting voice.
Give me Paddington the platformer. I wanna see a Venom 2 Metroidvania. I need a Dune kart racer more than I need to breathe. I am exaggerating slightly. Souls Wars and Spider-Man are sick and should stay. I just want a Parasite RTS that costs the same as a Taco Bell Chalupa Cravings box to exist alongside them. I digress. No matter how clean and well-composed licensed games have become, There'll always be a place in my heart for the 7 Samurai 20XXs and the DuckTales of the world. The truly strange creations which helped birth, nearly killed, and then rebuilt the medium I adore so much. And I hope someday they can be strange again. Maybe I just like things that are bad in a way that's good more than I like things that are good in a way that's bad. Or maybe I simply don't like things without flaws because everything and everyone I love are full of them. After all, that's what Halloween's really all about, right? Celebrating the weirdness and the little idiosyncrasies within ourselves and the things we enjoy. A holiday for the imperfect and many cracked vessels, because at the end of the day, it's the imperfections that make life memorable. Anyways, my ghouls and goblins, I hope you all have a positively petrifying time this Halloween. Drive safe, don't smoke cigarettes, and whatever you do, don't ever, under any circumstances, ever! Hey, speaking of tonight, I'm gonna be carving a pumpkin tonight at twitch.tv.com/BREADSWORD as of whenever this video goes live. I'm filming this at 3 in the morning, so definitely not now, but I'll be live just in general. I like streaming a lot and I want to do a lot more of it in the coming year. So come through if it sounds like something you'd be into. Anyways, happy Halloween and have a good night.
Your Honor, Starfleet was founded to seek out new life. Well, there it sits.